Hey everyone, TheGamingChief here. Today I'm going to be doing an updated video that I made a little over 2 months ago. And since I'm bad at timing things, the old video I'm kind of covered getting started with CFTools control panel. And even though it's only a little over 2 months old, it's actually no longer going to super apply anymore with the transition from CFTools control panel over to CFTools Cloud. So we're going to go ahead and go over getting started with CFTools Cloud since a fair amount of things have changed or have been moved around at least and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get started with talking about what CFTools Cloud actually is. So it is a way to manage and control your game servers using the Archon protocol and some extra features. It's very kind of similar to Battlemetrics in certain ways to where you have a bunch of different options and their kind of homepage better explains it than I really can. But you got your whitelist, your bans, your general security, VAC bans, stuff like that, name filters, chat filters, all that type of stuff. There's Discord notifications, ban list sharing in case, between different communities, stuff like that. There's also a lot of integration directly into the game, so you can see where everyone is on the map, different things like that. And it's essentially just a way to help you manage your server and can be very helpful for those larger servers out there. Once you go past a certain point, it makes it a lot easier to administer your server. Of course, this may seem very familiar if you use CFTools control panel. There has been some new features added since that, but that was kind of their old version, which was kind of a free but limited slot type of thing. And this is actually based with a pricing model in mind, but there is still the free tier. And that's enough talking about what CFTools Cloud is. Let's go ahead and get signed in and show you guys how to set up your server. So you can go and press sign in right here, and what it'll do is it'll let you either sign in with a username and password if you want to do that way, or use Steam. In my case, I use Steam, so I'm going to go ahead and go up to the top here, and I've already signed in. Once you create your account, you're probably going to get dropped on a dashboard like this or an account page like this. It's been a little while since I created my account, so I don't remember the exact way it was showing. But what we're going to want to look for is the subscriptions. As you can see here, I already have this active, but this won't be selected for you quite yet. But essentially, there is 4 different versions of CFTools Cloud, or different tiers that you can get. Of course, you do have a free version with 1 server, 1 ban list, and then you have a couple other ones. Typically, I recommend the basic if you're going to be doing anything more than just seeing if you like CFTools Cloud. So the free one is good to see if you like it, but if you do like it, you can get those extra features by switching over to the basic plan. And if we scroll down here, there is a feature comparison chart that kind of tells you a bit more about each plan. I'm not going to go over every single one. I'm going to go over some quick highlights here regarding Scheduler, the free tier, you only get 3 messages. Then same thing with Messenger, you only get 3, Triggers only 3, Integrations 1, and a few other things. So that's why you usually, if you're going to be using CFTools for a while, I would recommend switching over to the basic plan. And then of course there's bigger plans if you have a lot of servers, stuff like that. But this is something, you feel free to pause the video and you can look at all the plans, and let's go ahead and continue. And then I did quickly want to note that there will be a future video, just so you guys are aware, regarding the different plans and kind of what I think of it, but we'll keep that out and we'll just go ahead and continue with the free plan for today. So what you should be able to do is there should be a subscribe now button here, so you'll go through that. Of course, this is the free plan, so you won't be paying anything. And then once we have that and we go back to our dashboard, it should show our plan is free, and then we can go from there. So we should be able to add a server now that we are on the free plan. And then, of course, we're going to select our game. DayZ's the only one. And then this is actually a really cool thing. It allows you to search just by your server name. And we can see by typing TGC in, it actually does show up. And if for some reason this isn't automatically showing up, you can definitely go ahead and hit add connection details and fill it all out that way. In our case, we're just going to search this, click on our video series server, and then what we're going to need is we're going to need our Archon password. So we're going to go ahead and remote into our server real fast. And then I'm actually going to start the server because it was off. And while we're waiting on that, just a heads up, if you guys are looking for a dedicated server, definitely check the links in my description. There's more information down there. And since we need to get our Archon password here, what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to use Atom. You can use whatever text editor or file browser you want to use. I already have our DayZ directory pulled up here. And we're just going to go to our profiles folder. So we have servers. Server 0 is the test server that we are using. And then we're going to go into the profiles folder here. And then once we're in here, we should see BattleEye. And then you should see your BE server x64 DLL and along with your CFG file. So we're going to go and open that. And right now we have a Archon password, which I will change later, but this is our current one. So we'll go and copy that. And then we'll minimize out of this. We're going to paste that in here. And it is then going to ask for your Archon port. By default, this is going to be the same as your game port. So our game port is 2302 because that is the default one. So this is correct. We're going to go ahead and hit test, connection, and set up instance. And then this is going to go ahead and deploy our new instance. And now that we're dropped in, we're going to be given some very basic information. Since this has no data to really display to us, it's going to give us a few errors saying, sorry, not enough data. We don't have any players in the database or anything like that. So that's what's going to happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click up here and I'm going to change the identifier. And I went ahead and just put in there TGC, number 1, video series. So we're going to go and press OK. And that makes it just easier to distinguish if you have a couple of different servers or stuff like that. And the first thing that I'm going to do now that we have this server added is we're going to go ahead and use the GameLabs plugin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to settings here, and then we're going to find our API key because we're going to need this. Again, private key, don't show this to anyone. I'll regenerate this later, so that's all good. And we're going to go back to our server real fast, and we're going to go to our overview. We're going to go over to our mod configuration. And then there's the GameLabs add-on if we search GameLabs here. And the reason why we want to add this is it allows CFTools Cloud to directly integrate with our server, so do things besides through the Archon protocol. So this gives us extra features, like it'll go ahead and give us a map showing where everything is, where players are, stuff like that. It allows us to do a bunch of other cool stuff. So we're going to go ahead and add that. And then I usually like to keep that one just under CF here. And it's important to note, typically you want this as a server-side only mod, so we can click here to make it server-side. And that means all of your players don't have to have it installed, it just runs on the server. However, if you do run the expansion mod, you do need to actually check this to be client-side, so it'll run on both the client and the server. And the reason for that is without that, it's not able to read the expansion game chat, so it's not able to show you when people are typing using the expansion chat. So for now, we're going to keep this as server side since I don't use expansion, but if you do, keep that on the default client side, that way you can run them both. So we'll go ahead and save that. And we're going to go ahead and shut down our server. And there's one other thing we're going to go back into the overview and change real fast. In the Omega Instance Configuration tab, if we scroll down here a little bit, we do have the service ID and the API key options available here. So this can go ahead and report health of the server and sync priority queue and stuff like that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to copy our server ID here. We're going to paste that in. We'll copy our API key. We'll paste that in there. And then I'm not using priority queue, so I'm going to keep this off. If I was using it through CFTools Cloud, then I'll turn it back on, but I'm not, so we'll leave that off. We'll go ahead and save that. We'll go back there, go back to the dashboard. And before we start a server, we do need to go ahead and make one more change. I went ahead and opened up the GameLabs workshop page, which you can do from that mod page. But what we're looking for here is the installation information. I'm going to copy this block. And what we have to do is we have to create a new file. So we're going to go into our server 0, profiles. And then our profiles, you can actually see I had one here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that for now though. And we're going to go ahead and right click, new, file. And then what we're going to do is this needs to be named GameLabs.cfg. And we'll go ahead and this should pop up saying, changing the file extension. We're like, yep, we want to do that. And now it should go ahead and show the file extension as a CFG file like it does right here on the right. And if you hit view and then file name extensions, that shows you the extensions. We'll go and open this file, paste this in here, and then this gives us a few things to do. So debug enabled, we're going to leave that off. Connection verification, what it does is it checks to see if the API is actually working. And if it's not able to access the CFTools API, it will actually shut down the server. This is really good to make sure that your server ID and API key is being accepted. However, some people have reported they've had issues with it where the CFTools API temporarily becomes unavailable for a short amount of time and it restarts their server. So we're going to set this to 0. And our server ID, once again, we'll minimize and copy that. We'll paste that in there. We'll copy that. So we got our API key, we'll paste that in there, and we'll save the file and close it. Now we should be good to go ahead and go back here, and we can restart the server. Alrighty, our server is up, and we went ahead and did join it with our DayZ client, so we have that open. So we'll go ahead and refresh the page, and we can go ahead and have a look and see all the different settings, and do a very quick tour and try to explain most of the basic settings that you'll need to know about. So again, overview shows you some player data. We don't have, player retention or all that stuff quite yet, as we haven't had enough players or time. And then we do have our player database number, so we can see how many people we have in that database. We can go and click on graphs here. And this does show the server FPS along with, AI, active AI, animals, vehicles, all that fun stuff. And if you didn't notice up here, it does have our nickname, then our cloud ID, so our instance ID essentially, how many players out of the max, and the current server uptime. And we got our player database here, so we can open up a profile. We'll go back to this profile in a minute here. And then we have audit logs, so right now we haven't done anything, so there's nothing really to audit. You do have the filters here, so you can expand it, search by start date, end date, terms, all sorts of very in-depth ways to search. And then we can click on server logs here, and we can see some different logs, including like CF Cloud stuff, players joining, stuff like that. Again, you can search through all that. And then we have an Archon log here, so it shows everything that's happening Archon-wise. So we can see Mega Manager requested a shutdown, admins logging in, players connecting, GUIDs, all this stuff, private admin messages. And we're going to skip these options for a minute. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump straight down to settings. So we can go over some settings here. Now that we're on the settings, one of the first things we're going to see is the primary ban list we can assign to the server. I actually don't have a ban list right now, so let's go ahead and create one and show how it works. So we have the ban manager here, and then we don't have a ban list, so let's go ahead and create one. It creates one for you. We can click on it, and we can see there's nothing in it, of course. Here's a share code, so you can share this with other people, and they can go ahead and add it to their servers. So if you have a community you guys closely work with for bans, that's a great option. And then this would show any current bans. We don't have any yet. We'll check that out in a moment. And there's some general settings here, whether or not it's public or not. Public evidence, I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure if this quite works yet, but I'm going to turn it on. And then we have allow ban list followers. So essentially they can use your code to anytime you ban someone, it automatically just throws it to their own ban list. And we have team information. We're not going to be using a team today because that's not included in the free tier, and there's going to be its own dedicated video. Behavior, if we want to keep inactive bans showing here just so we can see them, yeah, I'm going to leave that. And then follows, if we've had someone else's ban list code, we could put this in here and we would follow it. And essentially whenever someone else, adds a ban to that list, that ban will get added to ours versus just using their ban list. And then we can go ahead and wipe the ban list, remove any followers, and then we can also delete the ban list. And then there is verification, so essentially you can go ahead and if you meet these requirements listed here, you can request verification, which means all the ban entries will show up on people's profiles if they're searching CFTools. As of right now, it won't show the bans. And then there's some integrations if you want to use a webhook for that. We're not going to really dive into that. What we're going to do though is we're going to jump into database and we're going to go ahead and add a ban. And then when we're trying to add it here, we can use an IP address. So I'm going to type in Google's DNS server because why not? We're going to put hacking in there, and then we can put hacking, wall hacks, whatever. And we have this listed as a permanent ban. We could uncheck it and select to a certain time. We'll keep that as a permanent one. And then it looks like you can add links and upload evidence as well now, so it looks like that's now available. And we can go ahead and issue the ban. And what this will do is this only will issue the ban for an IP address. If we wanted to do it for a certain player profile, which I do recommend doing it on the profile and the IP if possible, then we would need to go ahead and find someone's profile. So I'm going to use Philip here as an example. And what we're going to go ahead and do here is issue a ban under the bans tab. So this is our ban list that we created. And then there's two different ones. There's an account ban, and then there's an account and known IP addresses, which is the hybrid ban. I do recommend using that if possible. And I'm just going to make this a 1-day ban. And I'm not going to add any links or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and issue that. Oh, looks like there needs to be 3 characters. We'll add another one there. And if we refresh our ban manager, we can see that we now have that entry there, and we can revoke it or view details. And that just tells us a little bit about it. And then if we go over to protocol here, you can see the things that we've done recently, so the settings we've changed, and that's also on the overview here as well. So that's the ban manager. That covers the basics that you'll need to know. And what we're going to do though is we're going to refresh our page, because just because you have a ban manager and a ban list, it doesn't do anything if you don't actually enable it for your server. So we're going to go ahead and select that and hit assign. So that means all of the bans from here will be enforced on your server now. So this means, you can have a ban list and you can have like a second server and it can only be enforced on one server or stuff like that. And then we'll quickly go over the whitelist option as well. Currently we don't have any whitelists. We can create a new one. We'll name that test. And then so now we have that group. We'll cover this more a bit later. Same exact thing with priority queue. We don't have anything yet. We can do that again, test. So we have the test priority queue. We're just creating the bucket at this point. We're not actually enabling it or anything like that. Player notes. We're going to go ahead and create a new one. Just going to call this notes. So we're just creating the buckets now that we're assigning to the server. So you can have different buckets. Say if you wanted notes for one server or a whitelist for one server and a different whitelist for another, you would create multiple of them. Chat filter. It looks like I did create one at some point, so we'll just use that one. Name filter. Well, you can create a name one. And this is all going to be important that we do this so we can actually edit these. And this is where you would go ahead and enter different ban share codes if you wanted to use someone else's ban list. And then if you were using teams for the advanced permissions for multiple people, this is where you would assign a team to the server. Again, we're not going to be doing that, so we'll skip that for now. And you already saw the API key earlier, and then you have the danger zone here, so you can reset the game stats, player stats, wipe the player database, and that's referring to like the internal CFTools database, and not like, what your characters have in game or anything like that, and you can delete the server. So now that we have that done, let's go ahead and jump back over to these settings that we skipped earlier. And then so here we have the whitelist. So again, you can add whitelist entries from a player's profile and you can search here. So I'm actually going to pull up my profile here. I'm going to click on this server. So I'm making edits for this server, whitelist, and I'm going to permanently whitelist myself. And you'll see there's also options for reserved slots, which isn't really a thing in DayZ. There's priority queue is the main one. And then I could give myself priority queue, but we'll just stay with whitelist for now. You can also do the notes because we created that note bucket. And if we refresh this page, you'll see that that is there now. And we'll go over to priority queue. It's going to be the same thing if we did that. So just like we just saw there. And then we need chat filter. And it looks like I forgot to assign this, so we'll hit assign there. And we'll go back to that. And this is where we can go and add new filters. So this allows you to put text. It also does support regex, so this is super powerful. You can do all sorts of different combinations of things. And we're just going to put some random thing in here. So we'll say that. And then if they say it, you can warn the person. And then this will send them a warning message. And then you can kick them or you can ban them. You can make this a permanent ban or certain minutes. And then, of course, this all has a message that you would put it with it. So I'm just going to put stop. You would probably want to put something else, but so it's going to add the filter. And you can add a bunch of different filters. And it's, again, you can use regex, so you can go crazy with it if you really want to. And we have the same thing with the name filter here. So we can add a new one here. Again, it's regex. And we can put survivor here if we wanted to. So if we want to block people from joining with the name survivor, which, the default one, we can do that. And then you can either kick them or ban them. In this case, we'd probably kick it. Say change your name from survivor. and we'll confirm that. So as you can see, there's plenty of different things you can play around with this and kind of understand exactly how it works. Now we're going to go ahead and go over to the modules, and there's all sorts of different things here we can do. So we're going to quickly, as fast as we can, run through these. So ping limiter, it does exactly what it sounds like. It will go ahead and send some people some warnings if their ping is over a certain threshold and then kick them. You can also go ahead and protect whitelisted people so they don't get kicked for max ping. That's all that does. Whitelist, this is enforce the whitelist as a server connection rule. If you enable this, only people who are actively whitelisted will be able to join. We'll leave that off. VPN protection does exactly what it sounds like. You can turn that on. It can kick people falsely though, so keep that in mind. And then also you can protect people who are whitelisted. This is really good for people who are streaming on Twitch or something like that, who typically use VPNs just for their protection, DDoS, all that fun stuff, who want to use a VPN. You can add them to the whitelist, and then that means that they'll be able to join even with their VPN. And then we got geo-blocking. Again, you can go ahead and stop people from certain countries. And again, you can protect people who are whitelisted. And I'm picking something random again, but you can select certain countries. And then this will go ahead and mean anyone from those selected countries aren't able to join. Or again, you can invert it and only people from this country would be able to join. I'm going to leave this off though. And then we have some Steam information here. So if you're going to use any of these settings, you need to enable the module first. And then if you want to kick private accounts, you'll want to do that. And once again, there is the option to protect whitelisted players. So if they have a private profile, they can still join, even if no one else can if they're not whitelisted. You can kick people with VAC bans as well. And once again, protect whitelisted players if you need to. And then there's also a grace period here, which for the VAC bans, which essentially means if someone has, a VAC ban over a certain amount of time, you can let them in anyway. So say 365. So after 1 year, once they have had a VAC ban for 1 year, they can go ahead and join again. Or if you keep this to 0, it will still kick them if they have a VAC ban at all. And you can also do required account age. So if it's not more than, say, 2 weeks old, it will go ahead and kick them. This will kick private Steam accounts because you're not able to see the account age of a private account. And we'll go ahead and close that. We'll go into ban behavior. This one, you can protect whitelisted people from bans. This one's, I don't see exactly why you'd end up actually using that one. I'm sure someone has a use case for it, but we'll move on. And then we have our time zone for your server. This is going to be very important. You set this to what you use, and I set that to a time zone that will look familiar to me, so I can make sure all my logs make sense. And then you can go ahead and see your Archon information, so your server IP, the game port, the Archon password. In case you update your Archon password, you'll need to make sure you update it here. And we'll finally hit save and apply. So we'll go ahead and move along to the triggers. So this does have some triggers. As you can see here, there is only 3 of them allowed on the free plan. This is the default one that says welcome onto the server name whenever you load. You can access documentation here, which shows you all the variable names and what they mean. But what we'll do is we'll add a new trigger and go over some of the options that it has. So there's a bunch of different things. So you have a bunch of different events. So you have chat when they join, when they leave, when they load in, which is why you'll want to wait until they're loaded in. Like player tick, server data refresh, kicked, ban, executed, kill. There's quite a lot of things here. And then these are the different actions you can do. So you can do a raw console command. You're probably not going to be doing that a lot. Send a private message, send a server message, lock the server, unlock the server, restart the server, kick the player, kick all players, pause the whitelist, reactivate the whitelist. And then there's also different conditions are met, so you can add different conditions here. So, a message, CFTools ID, player name, session time is privileged, hour, minute, like there's all sorts of things. If the server's locked, server queue, player count, game time, all these different things. It's a very complicated thing, and I'll probably do a separate video on all the different common things you could do with this. So I'm going to just remove that one. We'll save that. And we'll move along to the scheduler. Scheduler, again, you can only have 3 of them with the free one. And we can see some basic things. You can turn this on. This is just basic scheduling stuff. You can do this for your restarts and stuff like that. I'm probably going to have a full video on setting up restarts with this, just because it's going to take too much time to go over. You got Messenger, so you have this. This sends this message by default every 30 minutes. And as you can see here, again, you only have 3 of them. And this just tells you can do a global message and an individual message. You can do whatever text on whatever interval and whatever delay. And again, you can go ahead and use all these placeholders as well. And then you have localization, which I find actually very useful. This allows you to edit a good majority of all the different messages that you can possibly see. You are banned, stuff like that, reason. So say if you don't like the wording that is default, you can change that. You can also change it to a different language if you needed to, stuff like that. So it has a good majority of all of the different things that may be used, so you can change how exactly they're presented. And then we have in-game commands. By default, it gives you the help command, which will just go ahead and print all the commands that are available. And then it looks like there's actually not a limit on this for the free plan, but there's a bunch of different things you can do. We'll quickly glance over it. So, the command without the exclamation mark, so test, and it gives you a bunch of different options here. I'm going to have a separate video on some common commands I see people use, and we'll go ahead and remove that and save that. So let's go ahead and jump over to the dashboard here. We haven't actually covered this yet. And when we're looking at the dashboard, it does show us some nice information. It keeps showing the server FPS, game time, stuff like that, so that's nice to know. And then we'll see all of our players listed here. It's going to show their IP address by default as well, as long as their internet service provider that is pulled from the IP address. It'll show a KD ratio if that applies, along with their ping and their current playtime. And when you pull this up, it does give you some additional information about the person. So when they joined, loading time, again, their IP and their provider. You can open their profile, which just opens that over here. We'll look at that in just a moment. You can kick the player, and you'll get an option for a reason. You can send them a private message, which we'll do right here. So we'll say test. And as you can see, it says admin test right there. And we can heal the player, so confirm the heal. That will heal them. This does require the Game Labs plugin, so that would heal us if we were injured. We're not really injured, so we're good there. And we do have the option to spawn an object, so we can go and click on that. How many you want to spawn. I'm going to do an M4A1. We'll go ahead and spawn that on the DayZ. And if we tab in here, it does take a second sometimes, so we'll go ahead and wait here for it. And while we're waiting for that to go through, I'm actually going to go ahead and spawn some beans as well, because you got to have your beans. So baked beans, we'll spawn that. And that does queue it up. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's not. It just kind of depends. You can also kill the player as well. And we have our M4 and our beans on the ground there, so that went through. And what we'll go ahead and do is we can go ahead and hit kill them, and then we'll wait for that command to go ahead and go through. While we're looking at that, we can go ahead and look at the map here. We can see there's different vehicles, and then we should be able to see ourselves as well. So we can see that's us right here. And then we can also send a server message. So we can go ahead and do that. Tap in there, it says test 1, 2, 3. And it took a second, but we did die there. So it seems like the plugin, it kind of varies on how long it'll take for things to go through. And we went ahead and clicked on console here, so we can go ahead and see, player connected, their IP address. This is all the stuff for the Archon console, Archon commands. You can see whenever CFTools.Cloud logs in. It's interesting because normally it's just the normal IP address there. So it looks like they're obscuring their IP address. Doesn't make a lot of sense because you can just look at your own server to see what IP address it's connecting, but I digress. We'll go ahead and close out of that. And we do have the server tab here, so we can lock the server, kick all players, shut down now. We can schedule a shutdown, so how many minutes we want until the shutdown. And I'm really glad they added this, but they did have the option to skip the next shutdown that was scheduled. So that can be very helpful in case you had to, do a unscheduled restart right before one is supposed to be scheduled, stuff like that. And then if we go back over to manage, we can see a bit more here. So we have some, priority queue stuff now. Whitelist, stuff like that. And if we look in the audit logs now, you can see a lot more of everything that's happening. So you can see all your admins who are doing certain things, so you can keep track of all that. Same thing with server logs, different things like that. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at my profile one more time. This can be any player's profile, but I'm going to show you mine. This does have a little timestamp showing when I was joining my servers. It shows aliases. I only have the one name, so it doesn't show anything else. some other information, battle eye standing, vac bans, game bans, stuff like that, when I was first seen, when it was last seen, and this is from my understanding from the new CFTools system, so this doesn't have older dates in it. Identities, your Steam, your battle eye, your Bohemia Interactive ID, and then any ban entries, this is if it was a public ban, so on a server that has their ban list published, so there's nothing there. And again, I can issue a ban on my own server here. And then you can actually go to activities here, select our server, and we can see some stuff, when I joined, when I died, stuff like that. So really nice. And then we have, our server. We can see some, detailed weapon stats, internal notes, all that stuff we were looking at earlier. There is, teams and stuff like that, but gonna definitely do that in a separate video because that can get pretty complicated. I think it deserves its own. And I think that's about it. I covered all the main features I really wanted to cover in kind of the general overview of everything. As far as more in-depth stuff with teams and, whitelists and scheduling and all that, those are probably going to be their own videos because I can talk for quite a bit about those. So I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment on the video or join my Discord server, which is always in the video description. Joining my Discord server does allow you to DM me, and there's also that support channel that allows you to interact with other people in the community to help kind of sort out issues, and I jump in there when I can. As always, if you have any video suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. And once again, if you are looking for some server hosting, check out Caliber Servers. They have some good deals and stuff like that. Information is in the video description. And on that, have a good one.